Hey guys, it is November 30th. We've got a PTR patch notes. And so a PTR patch notes is not in the game currently, but it will be in the game on December 6th. You can test them out in the PTR by going into your BattleNet launcher, changing the game version to public test realm, and you can look at all of these changes. Keep in mind, the queue times would be rather long, so if you don't join a customs game, you're probably not going to be testing out too much in actual gameplay, but you can go into try mode and test out all of these. All of these changes are expected to enter the Nexus on December 6th for the live realms. And as always, I'm going to go through my patch notes like I've done in the past, but I have taken some feedback from some of the people in the comments, so I appreciate you guys giving me a little bit of feedback there. And I've changed a few things. The camera has moved into the top right side of the screen, and also I've kind of gone over some of these with some of my friends and competitive players to get a little bit more feedback beyond just my own. As always, I'm going to be talking about the competitive scene and the casual scene. Casual scene is not necessarily not competitive, it's just that it's not at the level of where meta matters that much. For example, before this anyways, I've taken Rehgar at a lower win rate and played him from Bronze to Masters without any real questions. You don't really need to follow the meta when you're just doing Storm League, especially in the lower ranks. But when you get into the coordinated environment or the highest levels of competitive when you're working on Grandmaster gameplay, the meta is very important, and that's why I like to break things down between competitive and casual, even though casual still includes a lot of Storm League. So, number one, let's talk about some of the building changes. So they are making healing wells indestructible, and they will destroy when you destroy the fort. And I apologize, there's a plane passing over that's rather loud. So now the healing wells are invulnerable. They'll be destroyed when the fort or keep is destroyed. The forts have extra health, and the keeps have extra health to compensate for the health that the healing wells would have had, that you would have had to go through anyways. So while it seems like it'll take a little bit longer to destroy a fort or a keep, it will, but generally the healing well's destroyed before then, so it just kind of gives you another option. Overall, when this has been polled in the past, for my Discord as well as for the Reddit, most people agreed that the wells should be indestructible and then destroyed with Fort or Keep, similar to how they work in ARAM. So I think this is a pretty solid change. There is a hero rework for Rehgar, and as Rehgar being one of my favorite heroes, I will do an entire video on this, most likely today or tomorrow. So now let's get into Auriel. Auriel, they are doing a few things with Auriel. One, they're taking Swift Sweep and they're making it baseline, which I completely agree with. It was kind of a requirement in the highest levels of coordinated play. Because if you stood still too long, you were generally going to get hit by something you didn't want to, and something that you don't want to generally leads to a death, especially when you're playing at like CCL level or Storm Division level. So the cast speed's being increased, the cast finish time's being increased. Overall, it is going to be a way to really speed up how Auriel works. Now, it's also going to open up a lot of other options at level 1 too, which was kind of a frustrating part about Auriel in competitive, is you basically had one talent level 1. I know there were other talents that were popular in Storm League, but in competitive. Heavy Burden, Attainment Strikes, Stun durations being increased, Will of the Heaven, and Wrath of the Heaven are both getting additional functionalities to incentivize taking those over the quest at level 16. What I'll say is neither of these I don't think are going to convince too many people in the competitive environment. 10 spell armor isn't going to be that big of a deal, and 10% more basic attack damage for yourself isn't going to be that much of a deal. But I will say Will of the Heaven probably just gained some popularity in Storm League, in just casual play, because now you don't need to carry as much. You can get a lot of your energy by yourself. We're in the highest levels of competitive. The quest is likely still going to be taken, as that allows you to kind of infinitely scale, where as the game's going on, you get a heal that basically full heals your team. And so what I'll say, Auriel is going to be gaining popularity in competitive for hyper carry compositions, and I think that our win rate will go up just a little bit in Storm League. Brightwing. Brightwing has been kind of a dominant force, a high win rate hero in Storm League, as well as being seen, and not just one level of Storm League. I believe Brightwing is in the top 4 healers in every rank, which is pretty rare. So she's been doing really well. I think these are really simple nerfs. But my concern is like this one seems really high when her level ones were already pretty competitive. So I think that especially like W is starting to be taken more and more in competitive, and in Storm League her bribe was gaining more and more popularity. So I think that this change might have been a bit much. I would have rather seen them hit maybe something else to kind of lower that power level down. Magic Spit cooldown reduction is being reduced from 6 to 4. Again, another talent that can be nice, and it's great and competitive, but not too crazy. And then Invisible Friends, they reduce the stealth from infinite down to 9 seconds, and they increase the heal. Overall, these are all pretty good changes for the competitive play. It will drop her down a little bit from being like a top 2 healer to maybe like a top 5 healer. And I think that's good and competitive, but I'm a little bit worried about that impact in Storm League. I guess in Storm League you can still just go like bribe and other talents, but this is definitely a change that hit the highest level, which is interesting to me that they're looking at the highest level. Dehaka. Health and damage, just baseline, is being reduced. And this is also another one that's pretty good. He was, in the last, I would say, couple months, he's been a top tier solo laner, and to the point that in CCL and competitive gameplay, he's been almost permanently banned or picked in every single game. So to see that he's getting some just baseline nerfs is good, because even his just full W build was sitting at like a 58% win rate, and his E build was sitting at like a 55% win rate. Both of those are considerably higher than you would want. But the E build is kind of what got a lot of attention back on him again. I still think his W build is extraordinarily strong, and I still think even with this nerf, his E build will be very strong too. Just depends on the situation on which build you should be going. Feeding Frenzy's getting a nerf, which was used in 3 or 4 different variations of both his auto attack build and his E build. So overall, pretty good changes. I would still say he's a top tier solo laner, but maybe he's not at that first ban, first pick anymore. Falstad getting a slight buff to W and a slight buff to his trait. Overall percentile buffs will probably bump up his win rate a little bit, but probably won't change his priority level in competitive play. Imperius, his Q is getting a little bit of a damage buff on the final damage, which is when he sets them down. The benefit about this is that if you go Q build, there's a couple talents that affect the final damage. And so this is actually a pretty good buff. I like this. It kind of brings Q build back. W build is getting a damage bonus and a change functionality where Blaze of Glory deals additional damage with Valor's brand marks, but no longer consumes them. So now your W will be applied to someone, and each attack won't consume the W mark. So while it's a competitive talent, while it's competing with the auto attack talents generally taken on this, if you need more single target damage, this could actually be really powerful for taking out one person. And you also need to remember, if you're taking all the trait talents, there's no trait talent at 7. And so if you take trait at 1, trait at 4, now you have a way to constantly proc those 1 and 4 trait talents when you didn't have that before until level 16, 20-ish. And so I actually feel like single target, if you're just looking to be a bully to one person, W build or a variation of trait W build will be a pretty major bully. Overall, I think that this might actually bump up his win rate, and I also think that this might bring him up to being kind of a not really picked and competitive to maybe a niche pick against specific solo laners, especially healthier ones, because now you can proc the 2.5% health every auto attack after level 7. Jaina. Ice Block quest is being reduced, so where you used to finish it between levels 13 and 16, depending on what ult you took, or just how the game's going, you'll probably complete it around level 11 to 13 now. Winter's Reach used to increase the range of your Q. Now it increases the range and the missile speed. So while it's further away, you can fire it off a little bit faster. Or it reaches the target a little bit faster. I think that overall, with the playstyle we've been seeing with the competitive Jaina players, I think that I think more people are looking at Q as a safe option, Q at 1 as a safe option. And I think that these are some pretty good changes for that. Johanna's getting a few different changes. I'm going to read through all of them, but I'm just going to tell you really a short description of what I think is going to happen with Johanna. So, Iron Skin, her trait baseline, is getting lower cooldown, 3 seconds lower. Divine Fortress. This is when she basic attacks someone, she gains 8 armor. Well, now she's gaining 10 armor. It used to last 2.5 seconds, now it lasts 4. Change the functionality. Basic attacks against any target grant physical armor instead of just attacking heroes. And it still is part of a, well, I believe it's still part of a lone quest talent, where if you die, you're going to lose 5% of your health. Stops at 20%. So you get 20% bonus health. You lose 5% per death. Zealot's Glare. Additional functionality. Shield Glare deals 125% additional damage. This was the one that gave you 2 charges of your E. So now it deals more damage. That's going to speed up wave clear. And it's also going to set the E build just a tad bit over where I had previously placed it. Hold Your Ground. This is a talent that gives you 40% more shield on your trait. And it also lowered the cooldown of your trait by 5 seconds. Now it's 2 seconds. I don't personally like that they changed this too, because this talent was already competing with Subdue, and it was losing in a lot of cases against Subdue. And so the fact that they nerfed it means they probably see something that I didn't. But I am worried that it's just going to be completely outclassed by Subdue outside of a few situations where you need that extra shield. For example, against Garrosh. Garrosh is going to throw you into the team. You're going to use trait to stop the stun and the taunt. And if your trait breaks too early, then he just taunts you anyways. So you have to take Hold Your Ground. But with the cooldown reduction removed, I feel like the times where this is better than Subdue are going to be reduced. Level 7 Sins Exposed. This is the healing reduction. I think the healing reduction number needs to be increased more than duration, but that's my own personal thought. Steed Charge. Bonus Iron Skin durations being increased. I feel like this is a good piece of this talent, but it's certainly not going to be competitive with W yet. Roar, the passive bonus damage from your Q is being increased from 25% to 50%. This is still nowhere near enough to compete with the spinning hammers. Heaven's Fury, they're keeping the cooldown reduction there, but they are reducing the impact of the ult, which I think is probably a good trade-off since everyone loved being able to cast multiple ults in team fights, but the numbers is what was frustrating everyone. I mean, I get the cooldown is what was frustrating people playing against Johanna, but I think that the numbers are what's the safest to nerf. What I'm going to say about Johanna, I think her E build is going to be the highest win rate build in Storm League, meaning taking E at 1 and E at 16. Then the rest of the talents, you still take kind of the meta talents based on the situations. And I think that's going to be a solid build to move up in rank with. It gives you slightly earlier double soaking potential. It gives you a lot of damage and in team fights, as well as blinds, self-healing. Like, you basically get everything by level 16. So I think that build's definitely going to be a priority. In the competitive environment, I think she'll still be picked in almost all the same situations, but there was a priority of Johanna for the level 20 potential on maps they knew would get to 20, and sometimes team comps would actually like play comps just to stall, expecting to get that level 20, and I think that might be lowered a little bit. But overall, I think she's in a better spot than she was before. Junkrat, Big As. Big As is a talent at level 7, which used to make it to where your E-Trap, would only hit on heroes, meaning if a minion wave walked by it, or you took the talent level 4 that allows it to chase enemies, it would no longer hit a minion. It would simply just chase a hero, hit a hero, and it could go through just about everything else. They're moving that to 13, which is going to make it compete with the 2-Trap talent, which is going to kind of destroy the build as we know it, but it will kind of leave open the build where now you can take the movement, you could take the silence, and you can take the bigger version, which means while you can't control an entire zone like you used to, you're going to have a much more impactful trap when it does hit someone. So that's the one benefit, is you lose a better build, but you gain an interesting build. Level 20 Puckish Scamp was kind of a lower win rate talent. It allowed you to start Rocket Ride and then switch between ults. Now they made it kind of more beneficial. Both ult cooldowns are going to be reduced by 20 seconds. Lunara, we've talked about Lunara before in some of my previous videos. They kind of overbuffed Choking Pollen, and now they're bringing it down a little bit. I still think she'll be very strong with this talent. I just think that her priority might be dropped a little bit in the coordinated environment. I would say if you're playing in Storm League and you're finding success with this talent, you still take this talent. It won't change anything. Probius is getting a mini rework. What I'll say is I'm going to go through the mini rework here rather than doing a separate video for him. I apologize. My allergies have been a little crazy. So what they're doing, and I'm going to explain it before I get into this because it'll make a lot more sense. They're making him easier to play. They're making him more reliable, safer, and if you do play him in the old play style where it required a little bit more setup, you're going to be rewarded for doing so. So, Warp Rift. Duration's being reduced from 9 to 3 seconds. So, you'll have less time to pop it with your Q, but it's going to automatically explode on the expiration. So you can throw a bunch of Warp Rifts out and run away so that you could be a lot safer. And the damage is more reliable because if you ran away before you could throw your Q out, you didn't get any damage off, really. Now you're going to be getting damage off. Photon Cannon. They're reducing its attack speed if it's not in a pylon, because now it doesn't require a pylon. But if you have it in a pylon, you get that attack speed back. The other thing, too, is while it's in a pylon, it reveals nearby enemies, which used to be a quest reward, and now it's just baseline, as long as it's in a power field. They're also making a change to both Photon Cannon and the ult, to where they will only target enemy heroes, or at least prefers enemy heroes. And so the benefit of that is you used to place all of your stuff, and then he was kind of chaos, right? If you were fighting near an objective that had minions like Infernal Shrines, it would sometimes destroy all the minions, and you would never get a lot of damage off with the heroes. Overall, solid changes. A couple of his talents are being changed. Keep in mind, they want to be more rewarding to playing by still following those combos, right? But they also want to be a little bit open. Echo Pulse. This is when your Q went in and came back. The returning Disruption Pulse deals 100% more damage as opposed to 75 that it was before. Gather Minerals. Removed functionality. Quest rewards no longer reveal nearby enemies. As we saw, it's just above now. Particle Accelerator is a completely new talent now. After hitting 4 heroes with Disruption Pulse, the next Warp Rift detonated by Disruption Pulse fires 4 pulses for 71 damage. So they fly out. It's a big AoE ability. It also reduces Disruption Pulse's cooldown by 0.5 seconds. So if you go Q at 1, Q at 7, then you're going to be constantly getting this happening, throwing more Qs out, doing more damage. It's just a solid option. And the return of your pulse also counts for these hitting 4 heroes. Rift Shock. New functionality. Exploding a Warp Rift within 1 second of its arming deals 90 damage over 3 seconds. While this will require a little bit of practice, this is really solid for single target damage. So for AoE, where you're just trying to hit everyone, we'll probably be seeing a lot of Particle Accelerator. But for single target damage, I would say that this is going to be really valuable if you know, like, if a taunt's going out, you throw out your W, your Q, you pop the taunt, or you pop the taunt to target, and now they're taking a bunch of extra damage. It seems pretty solid. The other thing, too, is this is just 90 damage flat. It doesn't mention heroes specifically, so it could be good for dealing with specific objectives, wave clear, turrets, anything like that. Pylon Overcharge. Duration's being reduced, can only target heroes, and pylons are invulnerable during the duration. Overall, I believe these are all asked for changes with the exception of the duration being reduced, but that probably made the ability too strong, so they had to drop down the duration a little bit. Shoot 'em up. Q. New functionality. Disruption Pulse deals 2.5% of enemies' max health as damage, and you reduce the cooldown. Keep in mind, this does not say that it sends untalented Disruption Pulses. So if you do go Q build, this will give you talented... all of the explosion Disruption Pulses will do 2.5% enemy max health as damage. And 0.5 more seconds off of your Q cooldown, you're going to be firing a lot of Qs. Overall, what I'll say is that this makes Probius more reliable for players that are pretty used to him, makes him easier to play for players wanting to pick him up, and it also makes him a little bit faster for damage and zone control. He's a little bit stronger as well, which could possibly bring him in to the competitive environment on maps where you might need to hold a zone by yourself. So, for example, it's common on Dragonshire to have an anchor in the bottom lane in competitive. Probius could potentially work as an anchor on that map. Or if you're on a map like Sky Temple and you need everyone splitting and you want one person to just hold as long as possible, Probius can give some extra strategies on those particular maps now. Raynor. Raynor, after his last few nerfs and his second, third, fourth, fifth rework, I don't know, he kind of dropped in popularity. He wasn't doing enough damage to keep up with Cassia, to keep up with Greymane, to keep up with Valla, and so he was kind of third, fourth, fifth pick for auto attackers. And so they just wanted to kind of bump up his numbers a little bit. Overall, that's basically all these are. Stukov, one of the highest win rates in competitive right now, and also a pretty decent win rate in Storm League. They're lowering his health and his healing from his Q, but they're leaving all of his silence talents the same. I don't think this is going to make a major difference to where Stukov sits, but it might reduce his win rate a little bit in Storm League. This one I wish they would have looked at competitive just a tad bit more, because it is kind of boring to see Stukov taking up a ban slot permanently, or to see teams just constantly being silenced every fight. Tyrande. Tyrande has been kind of out of the meta as a healer for the competitive environment because there are other healers that just kind of do what she does, but they do it better. So Tyrande used to be this option where you would grab some tank that had a setup. She would follow up, and she would make the follow-up very impactful. She would lower their armor, she would stun them, and then she still had heals and a decent cleanse. When they moved her cleanse to a more competitive tier, it kind of dropped her out of the popularity, and people just started using Kharazim in competitive. We've been seeing a lot more Kharazim because he does the same thing. He has a better cleanse at 16, he has similar damage for follow-up as Tyrande early on, and he can still heal okay in between fights, and Tyrande can heal okay in between fights. So Kharazim just kind of outclassed her for a while, and so... But she did also have a really high win rate in Storm League. I think she's the highest win rate healer in Storm League the last time I checked. So it's going to be tricky to kind of balance her in competitive while also not ruining her in Storm League. So what they did was WBuild had the highest win rate in Storm League. They nerfed the two later W talents. Duration of the damage and movement speed reduction is being reduced. And also the percent health of her W is being reduced. But for competitive, they are buffing Lunar Blaze, which was her kind of her burst. After whatever target gets stunned, you follow up your team's stun with a little bit of burst. And they're also buffing True Shot Aura, which also resets your trait, which is kind of nice. They also buff Mark of Mending, the range is being increased, and it's also going to heal the target that's near the... It's going to heal targets around the target you're attacking, not around Tyrande, which is kind of the targets that need the healing more. And then they're buffing both of her ults, her level 20 ults. The Huntress increases the healing bonus from 50 to 75%, and Celestial Wrath increases the slow. What I'll say from this is it's probably not going to make a huge dent in her competitive play, but I do think that WBuild will still have a pretty good win rate in Storm League, and I said this last balance patch, they've been slowly buffing her trait talents more and more and more. I've been playing a lot of trait build Tyrande going Starfalls, because once you get level 20, your Starfall applies traits to everyone, and I can tell you, it's interesting. It's pretty strong. Like, you can keep people like topped off, you can keep traits on most people. It's rather strong, so I'd recommend trying it out, and I may end up making a video about it when it's good, when it's bad, because it has been a build that I've been playing around with, and I haven't seen a lot of people messing with it. Zarya is the last change. Together We're Strong. They just made it to where it lasts 3 seconds rather than lasting the duration of the shield, because if the duration of the shield, if the shield was destroyed, you would lose this benefit. And Deep Burn. This talent's actually kind of a funny trivia. This talent has been bugged almost the entire time that she got this talent. So she got this talent, and what it does is if you land Q on someone, every basic attack damage you do gives you 1 energy. And so you can ramp up your energy gain pretty fast. The problem is that it was bugged. It actually gave 2 energy. And when people first realized it was bugged, they were like, oh man, this is going to be overpowered. This is going to be crazy. It got banned in a bunch of tournaments. And I was looking at that and I was like, I don't think 2 is going to be that overpowered. And I was watching games where people were playing it, and I think Blizzard saw the same thing. Even though it was bugged, the bugged numbers were not overpowered. And so it's a fun talent that can get you your energy pretty quickly, but you do lose some pretty competitive talents. And then there's some bug fixes. I won't get too heavy into that. And that is our balance patch. And again, it's on the PTR. It will be entering the live game on December 6th, I believe, unless something else comes up. And let me know what you guys think about this one. I think overall the Tyrande buffs are pretty solid. I think that the rework, the mini rework of Probius is interesting. And I'm excited to see the Rehgar rework, which I'll get into as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.